Joining us right now is former ambassador to the United Nations under the Bush administration, Ambassador John Bolton. Ambassador Bolton, thanks for joining us this morning.
Well, good morning. Thanks for having me. Glad to be with you.
You just heard that flashback of President Obama on the campaign trail, November 2nd, 2012, just a couple of days before people chose to bring him back for 4 more years, and that was a huge talking point that he had beaten al-Qaeda. They're decimated, and yesterday CNN showed this video of over 300 members of al-Qaeda, including all of their key leadership, brazenly meeting out in the open and then posting a YouTube video to sort of thumb it in the face of America that they're alive and kicking. Are we taking the al-Qaeda threat seriously, and do we have any real policy other than just sending drones whenever we happen to spot one?
No, I don't think the president takes the threat seriously, and I don't think he understands the nature of terrorism. I think his approach, which has been through the law enforcement route, doesn't understand that we're actually in a war. And I think he is so blinded by his ideology that he just can't see the reality. Now, the real debate here is the president lying about al-Qaeda, or is he blind to it because of ideology? And I know for critics of the president, it's a lot more fun to say he's lying. I think he's blinded by the ideology, and I have to say, I think that's worse than lying. When you tell a lie, at least you know what you're doing. But if you can't see reality, which is the problem, I think, with the president, if reality stares you in the face and you see a parallel universe, that's not correctable.
I need to ask you a quick follow-up on that. When you say the president is blinded by ideology so he can't see the real threat, can you better define what is that ideology that keeps him from seeing al-Qaeda as a threat?
Look, he doesn't think that Islamic extremism really exists. He thinks it's not a problem. He thinks the Muslim Brotherhood is just fine. He wishes they were still in control in Egypt. He thinks you can talk to these fanatics and reason with them and negotiate with them. He's doing it not on the terrorism front, but with the Ayatollahs in Tehran on the nuclear weapons program. And whether they're Shia or Sunni religious fanatics, they look at this guy and say, we're going to take him to the cleaners, and they are.
All right, so we've seen this video of this large gathering of al-Qaeda over in Yemen. And you know how these things work, and you were in a position once to get the intelligence stream coming past your desk. So my question is, can you imagine that this could happen and we not know anything about it, as evidenced by the fact that we didn't do anything about it? If we knew about it, wouldn't we have responded?
Well, one would think that this would have been a perfect opportunity to use those drones the president tells us that he's so forceful in using in Pakistan and Afghanistan. There may be an alternative explanation why we didn't destroy that meeting. Maybe we're following people back to their base camps. There may be arguments there. We don't know about it. It's not necessarily something that we would have broadcast. So to me, it's not the fact of the meeting. It's the fact that the meeting is going on showing that even core al-Qaeda, which is what the president's main case has been, is up and running again. And that doesn't count the what they like to call the distributed network of al-Qaeda affiliates in Libya, in Syria, in Iraq, all over the world. And that's why Obama's own director of national intelligence testified a couple of months ago that the terrorist threat is just as bad today as it was before 9/11. The president's entire view of the world is like looking through the wrong end of a telescope.
All right, so let's move over to what's going on in Ukraine right now, because there was a clash, a few people died, but really the bigger picture here is the United States keeps calling Vladimir Putin. They keep having conversations, and Vladimir Putin seems to be completely ignoring the wishes of the United States.
Yeah, every time Obama talks to him, he says, Vladimir, what you're doing is a violation of international law. and I think in the Kremlin he has to put the phone down to suppress his laughter. He couldn't care less about what Obama is talking about. And, just earlier today he called what the government of Ukraine did by using military force against these, whether they're outside agitators or pro-Russian Ukrainians, he called it a crime. That is laying the predicate for further Russian military intervention. So they're negotiating, the foreign ministers are negotiating in Geneva. That's how Obama responds to a foreign policy crisis. He sends John Kerry out to deal with it, and I fear that they're fueling the tanks across the Russian border.
Well, and let's talk about those discussions that they're having today, Ambassador John Bolton, because I know that a lot of people, including myself, had the 2012 election gone another way, we would have liked to see Secretary of State John Bolton sitting at that table today instead of John Kerry. What would you do if you were facing off against Russia in these discussions?
Well, I think a lot less happens at the negotiating table than meets the eye. I think the real test is elsewhere, and let's just describe what our objective is. We want Ukraine to be able to determine its own future, to remain free, and we want to do it peacefully. Now, how do you do that? Do you do it by making the cost to Russia so high that it's deterred from going in? And I don't necessarily mean militarily, I mean politically and economically, too. That's what deterrence is all about. Barack Obama has never understood deterrence. We want to resolve the Ukrainian crisis peacefully. His weakness, his inability or unwillingness to stand up to Putin increases the possibility that Ukraine will end up badly for the Ukrainians, and it will end up with military action. Peace through strength, that's the Reagan slogan, has worked before. It could work here, but we're not following that policy.
All right, so what should we do to make this better? I mean, let's quit wringing our hands. Let's say what can we do?
If you want to keep Ukraine independent, let's you got to cross that barrier first. If you don't care about Ukraine, then you can disregard what I'm about to say.
Right.
We have enacted absolutely trivial sanctions against the Russians for what they've done. They're not paying any substantial cost. They think it's temporary. It's going to go away. If you want to keep Ukraine independent, you should bar Russian financial institutions, all of them, from any entry into the American and European financial markets. That's the place to start, number one. Number two, you should go back to what George Bush proposed in 2008, put Ukraine and Georgia on a clear path to NATO membership. And then there are a lot of tactical things you can do in the meantime, like give the Ukrainian army some weapons.
Yeah, and well, listen, I heard Jay Carney yesterday at a press briefing, or maybe it was the day before yesterday, saying they're not even considering giving any weapons to the people on the ground there in Ukraine, the government there. Is it wise to telegraph to Russia that any option is off the table, that's not even being considered?
No, that's why deterrence is failing here. I mean, the reaction in the Kremlin when they hear comments like that is pedal to the metal. Let the tanks and the armored personnel carriers go. They're not going to do anything to stop it.
Really quickly, where will it stop? People are saying that that they're sticking the spear in as far as they can until it hits stone. Where is the stone? Is it a NATO nation? Is that where they draw the line?
Well, I think all the former republics of the Soviet Union have to be very worried, including the Baltics that are members of NATO. I think Putin has doubled down since the lack of reaction to annexing Crimea. He has used military force on the continent of Europe to change boundaries, and he's been met with no resistance at all.
It's a serious situation. Ambassador John Bolton, thank you for joining us. We are going to be calling upon you, I think, more often than not in the weeks to come.
I think we need your help.
I look forward to it. Thank you very much.